Had a good week of practice. Really like the focus of our guys this week. Obviously a rivalry game against Minnesota and where it is. First off, I want to give a shout out to, obviously he can't play in the first half of this game, but Johnny, to get recognized as one of the 12 finalists for the Lombardi, just speaks volumes about what he's done. I think the thing that's been impressive to me, you know, every day we have NFL scouts come in. The part that jumps out to me, it's no secret that Johnny's a good player now, and he continues to be so productive in what he does. Just excited for him and what he's accomplished. Also within the framework of our team, Reggie practiced, Keith practiced. I think those guys, as long as they handle today's practice a little bit in these situations, it's a little bit about not what they do that day, but how they feel the next day. But excited where they're at. And then that really should play out for everybody injury-wise. You know, it was colder here at the beginning of the week. I think game day there is supposed to be in their mid-40s. Have a little chance for some rain in the morning, but great stadium over there, great opportunity. And obviously Minnesota sits at the top of the Big Ten West, and for us, you know, to get where we want to be, we got to take one day at a time. I think to get to Saturday, this group's been doing that. Excited for the opportunity on Saturday.
It's just for clarity with Keith and Reggie. There's nothing more clearance-wise. There's not another step.
No, they actually practiced, to be honest, they practiced on Tuesday too. So we practiced on Tuesday, backed off a little bit yesterday, and then practiced them today.
How have you seen the team embody this last fourth of the season where you guys know what you have in front of you to get to where you want to be?
Great question, but it's really just about this week, right? So I gave them a calendar that kind of laid out the year, right, and that we have left of 4 weeks, but it's literally a daily task. I challenged them to practice on Sunday. Because of the bye week, we got to jump on Sunday, practice on Tuesday, Wednesday. The only way we can make Saturday happen is have a good Thursday, and that happened today.
Monday, you just mentioned kind of like what PJ's done in Minnesota. Is there anything particular about this Minnesota team that strikes you?
Well, I think a little bit. You know, I think as a coach, for me as a head coach, what I always see is when you have transition within the year, right? And obviously they've had a couple of running backs that haven't been able to be out there, right? I think the growth of the quarterback, he's a guy a year ago came in, you know, and did some good things. But I think as I was watching the film from where he was a year ago to this year, even in the last couple of games, it's been pretty evident how good a football player he is. Some supporting parts around him. I really love 27, their DB, right? Like he's a guy that from the state of Illinois, I've been a fan of his since I first saw him in an opposite kind of way, right? Like he's a really productive player. So it wasn't surprising to see his brother come in last week and do a lot of good things. Hadn't seen him much, right? But to see the way he's wired, it's impressive. I think PJ's culture, which he talks about a lot, right? He even gives me, when I text him, he gives me an RTB. I'm like, I don't need to see row the boat, Peach, right? But like, it's just who he is and what he believes in, and I think he reflected in their team.
You know, last night you talked about Gabe's versatility on the radio show a little bit. What kind of value does that give you to have a guy who can play?
Well, Gabe is, you know, it sounds like, you know, when you interview Gabe and he's been around, he's been successful, everybody thinks he's like, you know, been here 5 years. He's only been here a little over a year and a half, and I think as he begins to continue to build his career and his ability to do things, he probably shocks himself some days on what he can do. I think going back to that week, 2 weeks ago against Wisconsin when he played more exclusively in the D-line position, he had a huge jump from Tuesday to Wednesday. And just a very talented young man, extremely intelligent. I think we're still figuring out how we can use him all the time, but a very diverse player and a guy that I'm excited to see where he goes.
Were you on the Big Ten coaches call last night?
You talking about the head coaches thing?
Yeah.
We have head coach meetings every month, right? So you know, Bret kind of warned me that there was something floating around out there. And as one of the things I've been impressed with is since Tony came on, he has literally, I wouldn't say daily, but weekly communications through emails. We do Zooms, if not twice a month, usually once a month for sure. And yeah, I was on a Zoom yesterday that took place between us, the head coaches, in the Big Ten office, and I think that should probably stay the way it should stay all the time.
With, you know, Reggie possibly potentially, you know, back in the fold, just what does that maybe do for your offense to have another guy?
Well, Reggie just, you know, you guys have seen him. He just always kind of is a guy that shows up when he's needed, right? Like he's a guy that ended the game against Iowa a year ago, right? Like there's just times where he's popped up on the scene when no one sees it. And this year was a little bit different, coming in as a starting tailback, right? And unfortunately got injured. I know it's been frustrating for him. I think the part that I've really watched Reggie do is just his overall positive focus and energy, even those weeks when he wasn't playing. And he's been great with Caden. I think when you saw Caden's responses when it was the highlight of Caden's moment, right, the first thing he did is give credit to Reggie and Josh in particular. So speaks volumes, I think, to that and what he's been able to do in that running backs room. And excited to get Reggie out there because I know he's been itching to get out.
Coach, the schedule for 24 is going to come out. I know you got all sorts of other stuff going on. Is that something you look at like briefly and say, yeah, worry about that?
Well, we kind of knew who we were playing, right? And we didn't
course.
know the exact order. And it's something that Roger, Denny, and I, and Mark, and Josh have been working on. Yeah, it's we got it the other day. It's you guys know who we're playing, right? There's a lot of travel on the front end, a lot of travel on the back end, which is unusual. We're the only team that has that. But I think when you see the schedule, it should get fans excited. I mean, to have 18 teams now in the league, and to kind of have this randomness. And for us, we've already talked about, made graphics about how we can use that in recruiting. We're going to Oregon, right? And we're going to Rutgers and Penn State. So we've kind of, you talk about a kid that wants to travel and see the country, and nobody can do that more than the University of Illinois. We're going to be at Rutgers, going to be at Oregon, we're going to be everywhere in between. It's an exciting time to be in the league, and of course, our diligence is on right now. But as a head coach, like last week was a lot of recruiting. You have to be, and then like Pete Wyden, who's our director of admin, or basically a guy that kind of handles all of our travel in the building. All last week, he was literally at 4 new hotels, right? Because we've never been to Oregon, never been to USC, never been to UCLA, never been to Washington. So he went and saw hotels where the other team usually stays, right? So there's a lot of dynamics and workings going. When you go west, there's a lot of conversations about, do you go 2 nights ahead? Most teams in the NFL and most teams in college football, if you're travel multiple time zones, especially west, you'll go a couple days in advance just to get players acclimated. So there's a lot of moving parts.
I know the school is going to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of the Michigan game.
Is that what you're digging for?
I'm just wondering, just your thoughts about that. Just the idea of playing them. Maybe you don't want to play them. So
No, I always want to play Michigan.
I know.
I think the part that's been awesome for me is to come here to the University of Illinois and to work for an athletic director who really his passion for the University of Illinois is unprecedented. For you guys that know him, like he played here, got 2 degrees from here. He's been an AD, like it's in his blood, right? And literally, I can remember in our first conversations in my first 6 months on the job, talking about this year, the anniversary, the reunion of, or not the reunion, but the anniversary of 100 years to play Michigan, to what a special game that was in Illinois football history. He educated me, right? And I think when the possibility came to light of having that opportunity from everything that we can do to make an honoring of the legacy behind us, but also an honor of what could come in front of us, it's really a cool opportunity, and I'm very excited. I think not just for our football team to play Michigan here, right? It will be an awesome experience, but to have all that added on top of it, and we'll educate. I promise you, there's not a lot of guys on our roster that understand what that means, but by this time a year from now, I promise it will.
Any hint on if that game might line up on a?
I would feel good about it. Wait a couple hours, but it's just kind of like I go through life all the time, right? And I'm always amazed. Shared with these guys a story this morning, right? There's just little moments in time where you realize how many things come together to make something special, right? So you guys don't walk in through our front, but our front door is Tip Rockman this week, right? So when we walk in, there's always a player that's kind of featured, and it's Tip. And one of our things that we're talking a lot about this week is, right, just doing your job, focusing on the one-on-ones and all that stuff. And Tip, the first time we went to Minnesota 2 years ago, scored his first ever touchdown, right? And I think about the growth that kid has had since we've come in the building, from 6'4", 225, walk-on from South Dakota, to literally being one of the premier players at his position. And it's been a lot of hard work, and it all kind of aligns to come together this week. And I know he's excited to go to Minnesota, a South Dakota kid, and play in that environment. So that, in conjunction with like a thing like Michigan coming to light, I think it's part of the reasons college football. So there's a lot of reasons for everybody to get mad at college football right now, and I get it. I joined the party, right? There's some things that are a little out of whack. You got to embrace the portal. You got to embrace the transfer world. There's things within our conference that are making major headlines and stories. I always think, a buddy of mine always said, hey, these stories are always so much better when you're not in them. And I think that's the part that, but we are, you know what I mean? Like, I just can't stress how much I tell our coaches and our players, and we do things the right way, and we do them that way every day, and that way you never have to worry about things that are out there. But it's a fun time to be in college football, for the Big Ten to expand to where we're going next year, and the schedule that's going to get released later today, for teams that love, for people that can't afford to travel or go to away games, to see the teams that are going to be coming here and playing at the University of Illinois. That's never been done before. It's a pretty cool time to be a part of it.
How important are these times? Right, there's, like you mentioned, there's a lot going on for you guys to be together and for Tony to lead.
Yeah, I get it. I know there's a lot out there. a personal reflection. You know, a lot of it's been brought up before I ever came here, right? We won 3 Big Ten titles in a row, right, before I left Wisconsin. And our 3rd year was a year that we lost an overtime game to Ohio State and Penn State. And we played in the Big Ten championship game because those 2 teams were ineligible. Penn State was ineligible because of the things that had gone on there many years before. And Ohio State went 12-0 that year, but they were ineligible because of the tattoos and all that took place. So it was Urban's first year there. And neither one of those teams could play in that Big Ten championship game, which gave us the opportunity, right? And, you know, we beat Nebraska, 70 to whatever it was. And I think there's just a lot of just things in play now that you go back-to-back experiences and understand what's out in front of it. So, yeah, it's I just kind of stay in my lane, do my job here at the University of Illinois, but it because of what's going on, it affects all of us, right? So, you know, it's going to be an exciting time for us to play Minnesota on Saturday, but it's also just a really cool time in college football right now to see all that's going on.
Do you feel like you have a voice? I mean, you're one of the elder statesmen in this conference.
You know, I don't know if I have a voice, but I've never been one to shy away from talking, right? I really love Tony and what he's brought to the table, and you know, it's going to be something that will probably shape a lot of things in the future, right, about what's happened in the past. And all I'm just going to do is worry about playing Minnesota and see what we can do.
Just a logistical question about Johnny.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think the first half looks like for him? Is he attached to J-Mo or Aaron? And then how do you get him ramped?
So Johnny, one of the greatest things I've seen him do this year, I literally called him randomly, I guess it was during the bye week because I wanted to give him an update on where he was. And he was at a wing shop, right, with 3 young players. Right, and I said, well, first off, Mr. NIL, I hope you're paying for this, right? And he's like, he started laughing, and it was actually when Bret had texted me about he was being nominated for the Lombardi, right? And I thought, here's a guy that is on the cusp of, you know, being everything that he is in college football, has an NFL opportunity that very few people could ever achieve, right? And he's at BW3s with a bunch of young players, right? And that says what Johnny is, right? Like, you saw him react the way he did when he got thrown out of that game. Like, this guy has had, I don't know how many pressures, over 100 pressures. I don't know how many hits on a quarterback, sacks, and he had 1 late hit against Purdue, which we could, you know, probably talk about too as well. But this guy's been so diligent in his detail of how he plays. This snaps the streak of 30 straight starts. Like, you're a good player if you have 30 straight starts, and a lot of times it's because of injury, but this is because of obviously a play that he has to sit out for an entire half, you know, and that's the part that's a little bit frustrating. But I think whatever it is, whatever he's doing, which I know will be involved coaching the guys that are playing a position that he wouldn't normally be playing, he's going to do it 100%.